Right. Let me briefly introduce you the business analysis and software design module, which is one of the core modules in any IT degree. The idea of this particular module is to get an understanding how we can build system from uh, start starting to the end, right? So we will be discussing the design aspect of this, how you start with making a decision when you want to build a system. So there are some recommended texts for you in case if you're interested in learning more on this. So here are the books for you to start looking at the system analysis and design and information system analysis and design. So both are the recommended texts. Right. So our aim for this module is we will be providing you the principles and techniques used in analysis and design. And we use these two to solve business problems and using the knowledge and skills in business analysis, software development cycle, system planning, requirement analysis, modeling tools, and then we'll also look at system design and implementation. So these are like various different topics we are going to work on it, especially starting from collecting required information to build a software system. And we are going to go through each and every different phases in software development. Now, what are the things that we expect you to achieve? So first of all, we will look at the role of a business analysis, like a person who's interacting with the software development team as well as the organization. So in that perspective, we will try to understand what is the software development life cycle is, which means like when you're developing, what are the different phases that you are in developing software system. Then we will also discuss about the planning because you have to plan the system. And then it will be a development project. So since it's a software development project, we have to make a schedule, like what are the various phases and then timeline. So we will also talk about a little bit on project management tools. Third one, analyze functional and non-functional requirements. Like whenever you want a information system, you need some functional requirements. For example, let's say you are developing a software for a library, then borrowing a book is a functional requirement. Similarly, there are non-functional requirements, something like, okay, how many users you are allowed to access the system at a particular given time. So likewise, for any organization, when you're developing information system, we need to identify what are the functional and non-functional requirements. Now, once you have collected all the requirements, we need to design this information system. So the next part, we will learn various different types of modeling tools we call tools. So we talk about things like data flow diagrams. In this one, we will learn how data flow within different modules. Then we will also look at UML, which the notations, particularly we are going to focus on object-oriented principles. Business process modeling, we call BPMN, which is a model, graphically we model whole the process. Then things like ER diagrams, I hope you might sometimes you might have already learned, or else you will be learning this in data design. So all these different types of tool and how we are going to effectively use these tools we'll be discussing uh, as the next step. Finally, we will look at applying the design and implementation techniques. So in that particular case, we talk about Sorry about that. The next one is the implementation. Once you have designed, we need to implement. When you say implementation, you can use a developer system, or else sometimes you are going to purchase from somewhere else. So all these ideas we'll discuss as the last step. Right. How the marks are assessed. So you will have about like 50 marks coming from continuous assessment and mid-semester. So that 50 will mostly coming from the group work. When you say continuous assessment, we'll have a couple of group works, we'll give it to you. That means we'll put you into groups, and as a group, you are going to make submissions. So, and then finally, as a final end exam, you will get 50 marks. So that's how the assessment are planned. Okay, so let's start the session then. Right. These are like two pictures I have taken from a book, how people reported to work. So what you see in the black and white is use of punch cards. Still, some of the places we use punch cards. And what you see here is there's a machine where it records the attendance. And this is in 2013, where you use cards like ATM, where you mark the attendance. And you know, nowadays we have fingerprint systems or face recognition systems. Things have changed. What we want to highlight here is the way we work, the way we interact has changed over the time. Right. So these two will show you like how technology is used in our day-to-day life. And most of the time, our computer and systems are developed to cater this. So in this part, we are going to talk about information technology, as well as our topic for this module, that is system analysis and design. So we already know IT is a combination of hardware, software, and services. So we have computers, we have other things, and then on top of that, we have software to serve the people. So the idea is in IT, we want to share the information in different levels for different users. So then system analysis and design, on the other hand, is we look at how do you develop such systems. So system analysis and design is the process, how do you create such systems, which we use data into useful information. So as I told you earlier, in this module, we'll be looking at the whole process. What are the phases, how we do it. So those are the ideas that we are going to look at under the systems analysis and design. Right. Saying that, any information system, you will have essential components. There are 5 essential components: hardware, software, data, processors, and people. So you have to have infrastructure. That's why we say hardware. You have to have computers, you have to have scanners, you have to have point of sale devices, and so on. And the second one is you have to have various different types of software, right? For example, if I take our university, we use different software to manage you. We have Attend On to take attendance. So it's a software that we use to mark the attendance. Then we have LMS. We use Moodle, for example. It's another software, right? Similarly, we also keep track of your financial information in another software. So likewise, we use various different software systems, right, to manage the different services. Then we have data. So we have to store different types of data in different systems. So these are called raw material, and this is what will be used as a useful information. Then we have processors. we have different functions. Like, for example, you have to register for degree programs. That's one process. You have to register for exams, another process. Then if you look at like examination results release, it's a different process. So you can see that different users, different staff members, right, involved in various different functions within an organization. So that goes under processes. And of course, the last one is people. So you will see there are different types of people are interacted in data information system. We have people to enter data. We have people to make modification to the data. We have people to support systems. We have IT staff, for example. And then we have top management, like, for example, we have vice chancellors in a university, which look at the broader picture in information system. So likewise, you can see the people also a part of this. So just to summarize the slide, what we have discussed is the essential components of information system, which consists of 5 parts: hardware, software, data, processes, and people. Right. Now, let's look at a little bit on the businesses today. Now, why we talk about the businesses? Because we see nowadays, we need to understand various different business operations. So if you take our university also, we can take it as it's a education as a business, right? And then as a business, you have to change with the globalization. Things are like not like early days. We are not offering traditional degrees, for example. We have to change with the the outside. So if you look at the general business, any organizations, any business nowadays, you can see it's rapidly increasing the globalization. There are global presence. You work with other places, right? So you are not limited to one particular place, one particular country, one particular city, and so on. A lot of technology integrations are there. Like technology is used in everywhere. Like, for example, as I talked to you earlier, we are not getting like traditionally, we are not getting attendance, for example. Use technology for that one. So likewise, we use technology to provide various business operations. And the third one is, now you notice most of the time our systems are hosted in cloud-based systems. So that means we don't have an infrastructure now in premise, but we have hosted somewhere else. So these are some of the trends that you have observed in businesses today. So now, as a system analysis, your task is to model organizations' operations and information needs. Remember, I told you the system analysis and design is involving in the process of developing information systems. So system analyst is the key person who's actually modeled this, right? So you have to model the business. Then this is called business process modeling. So there are 2 things we have to aware of when we want to model business. First one we call business profile, right? We have to understand the business profile. And then we need to understand the processes, right? So, for example, when we talk about the business profile, any organization, you have mission, vision, mission statements, various functions, organization, products, services, customers, suppliers, and so on, right? So you can notice that these are very common. So any businesses, you can identify these. And there are processes, specific transactions, events, results that you can actually use to describe. So we use different modeling techniques as well if you want to graphically represent these ones. For example, if you look at an organization as an airline, and business process could be handling an airline reservation. If you're a product development company, then your processes could be, one of the process could be a product order, right? Now, in similar way, if you look at a university setting, right? So we have various different processes. So, for example, if you take a business process for a university setting, we can say that, okay, registering a student, right? So that is considered as the process, right? So we know that the task of the system analysis is the modeling these business operations, right? Now, saying that, you can see there are a lot of different types of information systems are there, right? And if you look at handling everything in a organization, so if you're using a software to handle the entire organization, we normally call these type of softwares ERP software. We call enterprise resource planning software. When I say enterprise resource planning, means everything. That means accounting, finance, human resource, sales, inventory, everything is there. So if you take the university setting, we know that in our case, we have student managements, we have systems. Then we have sales and marketing, where we market our degrees to the outside. We have human resource, which means we recruit lecturers, demonstrators, and so on, right? So likewise, you can notice that we are trying to cover everything in an organization. So if you have a software to cover everything, we call ERP systems. Then we have what we call the transaction systems, right? These are called transaction processing systems, which means you work in day-to-day. We normally call day-to-day. If you do things, that comes under this, right? For example, student course registration. If you take that particular example, it consider as a day-to-day transaction, right? You are, for example, one particular students register for a course. That's something that we can talk about. Then we have business support systems, right? So when you say business support, it means there are some software systems we develop to support various different types of users, right? For example, we can have student management system. So when we say student management system, so we can facilitate the users who are managing students, right? So that is something we call business support systems. Everything that, for example, if you are having a student support system, we can have all the information about the students, right? Their information about what degrees they have registered and so on. Everything could be put in place, right? Then you can have knowledge management systems. Now, knowledge management systems is usually you have a large database. So whenever you need some information, you search and it'll give you back, right? So ideally, you can store information, and whatever the information you can get it, you can store it there, right? For example, we can document knowledge. For example, in education setting, we can say even the e-learning platforms, right? Because we can keep uh, some material stored in it, and students can learn from this, right? Searching relevant information. Or you can think it as the library, right? Or even our Moodle can come under this, right? So because we store, and then using keywords, you can get the information. Last one is very simple. It's called user productivity systems. So for example, email, video, conferencing, word processing. So these are like software we use to improve the employees, uh, basically improve their productivity, right? So that comes as a user productivity system, right? To summarize, what we have discussed is different types of information systems. We started with the handling entire organization, ERP, TPS, BSS, and KMS, and UPS. So these are different types of software systems that you will notice in any business. Right. Now, this is a graphical example of showing you some business processes, how you model in graphically, right? So ideally, any process, you can have a event and multiple different processes, and finally you will have a result. So for example, in this particular case, it says the event is you receive sales order. So once you receive the sales order, you check the customer status, you verify customer credit, and then you enter the customer order data, which will complete the order. So these are like some of the graphical representation we use to model the business processes. Right. Another graphic. In this one, what you notice is any typical organization, what are the different levels you have. So any organization, you have operational employees who actually do the work. And then you have supervisors, middle managers, top managers. So for example, we can have lecturers and demonstrators here. Then we have head of the departments, deans, and then we have vice chancellors and so on. So you can notice in any organization, so you can see various different levels. And then within organization, you have various different business function, right? So you have human resources. That means a place where handle all the human resources, like in a university setting, the lecturers and the demonstrators and so on. Then we have accounting, sales, marketing, production, and IT. Right? So all these serves different types of users in different levels in an organization. Right. So why I actually showed you is, now we talk about the information system. That means we are going to have a software system to cater different types of users. So when you have a software system to cater different types of users, their information needs is different from user to user, right? Now, for example, if you take top managers, those who are actually making the decisions, so they have to develop long-term plans. We call strategic plans, like what happens another 10 years time, 5 years time. So that means you focus on the company's overall mission and goals. Similarly, then you can have middle managers and knowledge workers. So they'll be again under the top management, but they are the ones actually provide the direction, the resources for the supervisors and the leaders. So if you take like some workers, you can see system analysis, programmers, accountants, researchers, trainers, human resource specialists, other professionals, right? So all these that you can actually represent. And the systems they are using is business support systems and knowledge management systems and user productivity systems. So all these are used because their information is to managing the supervisors and the team leaders. So now we have talked about these two. So next is supervisors and leaders, and we have operation, those who really work on this. So supervisors, they do day-to-day operations, right? For that, they need decision support information, knowledge management systems, user product systems to carry out their responsibilities. Finally, we have operational managers, those who are actually working actively. So these are called operational employees, and they work with day-to-day, transaction. We call transaction processing systems. Remember, I told you, like registering course for a student, that is operational, right? So that comes under this. So what we have just discussed here is to highlight different information requirements for different types of users. Right, now we are going to look at system development tools, right? I told you like any software system, you have to make a model, right? It's like you want to build a house, but before that you make a plan, right? So likewise, modeling is a technique we use, usually graphically. You are going to make a plan for this. So the first part is modeling. We call this as business model. Business model describes the information that a system must provide. And the person who's handling this, we call analyst, create a model to represent different things like data, objects, network, and other systems. Ideally, what you can create is prototypes. Prototypes mean some early working models, right? Because it's very easy for you to come up with a prototype and see whether it's worthwhile to develop. Then you can use various different types of computer-aided system engineering tools, right? They can be used to develop and maintain information systems. Right. Now that we have talked about the different techniques and tools, so let's look at how people actually develop software. Again, system development, there are many ways. First one, which is what we are going to discuss in throughout the course, is called structured analysis, a traditional method. We normally call sometimes waterfall model, right? So that means in traditional phase by phase development of software, we call structured analysis. Then after object-oriented principles came in and people developed object-oriented, software systems. So this is called object-oriented analysis. We call OO. Third is something now we see as a state of the art. We call agile methods. Agile means we are developing system iteratively. Now, nowadays, let's say if you look at a game, you will notice that the game is released and then it continuously updates. So what it means, it iteratively develops the software system, right? So that's called agile. So these are the three common ones, but there are many others like joint application development, rapid application development. Likewise, there are many other development strategies are there. Right. So let's look at a little bit more details. So I told you like there are three main things. Then I told you the first one is structured. Now, structured means you have a series of phases. And this is also called system development life cycle. We call SDLC. Or in other words, we call waterfall model. Right? So like I said, it's like you have a plan for a building. Right? So we can actually explain all these processes. We can have a very nice graphically we can represent. And then we can address organization data and structure, the database, user interface, everything we can actually clearly specify in structured analysis. Right, here is a small graphic which represents the waterfall method or system development life cycle. So I told you like you have a series of phases. So these are the phases. We have system planning, system analysis, system design, system implementation, and system security and support. Right? And we'll discuss in detail in coming sessions what happens really inside the system planning, analysis, design, implementation, and so on. But what you see outside is the outcome. When you finish the system planning, you will get what we call preliminary investigation report. So this will show you the output. When you finish system analysis, you will get system requirements document. When you finish system design, you will get system design specification. When you finish system implementation, you will get a functional system. And once you finish the system security and support, then you will have fully operational system. Right. So I hope now you get a basic understanding about what structured analysis means. And we have noticed that you have multiple different phases. And each phase at the end, you have a particular outcome. Right, that's the first part. The second part is we call object-oriented analysis. Object-oriented means we see everything as object. I hope you remember we discussed object representation in our programming module. Right? We create something called credit card object. Right? So similarly, in object-oriented analysis, it uses the same principles. We talk about the objects, we talk about the properties, we talk about methods, and we talk about messages. So we can talk about like car object, and then properties like color of a cloud. And then you have methods like start, right? And then you can have messages. That means different objects can interact with each other by passing messages. So this is what you notice in object-oriented analysis. So this method also, you have a series of phases, very similar to SDLC, System Development Life Cycle, but it's more interactive, not very traditional. What I mean by interactive here, in traditional waterfall model, you complete one phase, then only you move to the next one, right? So therefore, it's not very interactive, whereas in this one, very interactive. Right? Okay, some examples, you might have already seen this earlier as well, but let me explain one more time. So this is a graphical representation of object-oriented representation. So here you can see two objects. We have instructor, we have students, and then we have what we call the parent, right? Which is called person. So you can see there are common names, address, and date of birth. Usually we can put into a what we call the superclass or the parent class in this particular case. So what happens when you are taking objects? In this case, if you create a superclass and subclass, so the subclasses inherit all the properties from the superclass. So what it means, now here we have person, we have name, address, and date of birth. And when we have instructor and students, and assuming that you are inherited, so they also have the same attributes, or we call properties. Then third one is you will have the methods. Right? So in this particular case, we have instructor, we have office location, office phone, and email. Whereas a student, we have a GP and advice. Okay, so that's about the objects. Then object-oriented model compared to waterfall is slightly different. So what I told you, the waterfall is you completely finish system planning, then move on to analysis, then design, then implementation, then support. Whereas this is very iterative process, and it creates small working models, which we call prototypes. So ideally what happens in object-oriented model, so you work on planning, analyzing, and designing it. And then once you get decent prototype, then you can go with the prototypes, and then you can go for testing. And that's what we call the object-oriented model. Okay, third one, which is I told you, like it's a newest process people follow to develop software, which we call agile methods. What you need to remember about the agile is it's developed incrementally. Incrementally means it develop part by part. For example, game, start with a very small 1 or 2 levels, right? Then you will get a new update. And when you update, you will notice that, okay, now game has, let's say 4 levels. After some other time, then it improves, like you will get 8 levels. So it's gradually improving, right? So this is called developing a system incrementally, right? And then usually the advantage you are getting developing system in this manner, you can get the user requirements, right? Sometimes when you're playing game, you might think that, okay, this should have been done like this, right? Think about a scenario where you can inform this to the developers, and development team can change this for you. Very interesting, isn't it? Right? So that's why I said, so agile methodologies actually focus on the users, and they want to satisfy their users. Right. And this is iterative, I told you. And then every time when you run one more time, you can always learn from your previous mistakes or the feedback from the users, right? So agile is, there are many examples based on the principles of these repeated iterations. For example, Scrum is one of them, and Extreme Program is another one. Right. 2 graphical representations about the Scrum and Extreme Programming. I want you to read more. This is a brief introduction about what Scrum is. So Scrum is agile methodology we use, where you develop system iteratively. So in Scrum, we have something called product backlog, which means, let's say, some features, right? So for example, let's think about the library management system. So let's say we are developing library management system using a Scrum methodology. The first one is we will get some feature sets we call product backlogs. Ideally, this will be selected by the users. So one example could be, let's say we want to borrow a book. So if you want to implement that feature, we can consider as a backlog. Right. Then they will decide to implement this one. right? And the duration is ideally from 2 weeks to 1 month. That they actually depend on the team. So ideally, what happens? You have, let's say, 2 weeks time. This is called a sprint. So during a sprint, they will develop this feature. And I told you, like, this sprint is like 2 to 4 weeks, right? And for the sprint, they will decide what are the from the product backlog, what are the sprint backlog? Okay, from the features that you have selected during 2 to 4 weeks time, what are the features you are going to implement? And then you start developing it. And what you notice here is while you are doing this for 2 to 4 weeks time, you have daily meetings and you meet, uh, you know, you check for the progress. For example, they have daily meetings. Before start any day, they'll ask every user in the team that, okay, what are the blockers, the problems you might have, and so on. So that, they will try to handle problems as early as possible. Once the sprint is done, they can actually finish the product and then they can deploy. So that's how the Scrum works. Similarly, in extreme programming, you can notice that similar phases, but it's slightly different way of doing things. So you can notice that in extreme programming, there are time frames, various time frames. You have months, weeks, days, hours, minutes, seconds, and so on. So which means that this will give you, the level of development based on the time frames. So you have release spans. That means any software development, you have a software release, ideally 1 month, 2 months, and so on. Then you have an iteration plan, ideally a couple of weeks. You have tests, set of dates, you have meetings, you have negotiations, you have unit tests. Like that means you are testing your functions and so on. And pair programming, which means ideally in these systems, two persons can, develop the code. Right? So these are like some of the phases that you will see in the extreme programming. Right. So we have discussed the three main phases. I want you to have a look and understand and read more on these three techniques. But there are many more, right? We'll list some of them here, like joint application development and rapid application development are some examples. So joint application development, it says team-based fact-finding. Rapid application development is compressed version of entire process, which means you focus on rapid development of software. Right. Now that we have learned about the software development techniques, we'll now focus on the project management. Now, irrespective of how we are going to develop, right, we need to plan, or we need to manage the costs for the project. So therefore, we have to use various project management tools and techniques when you're managing software development. Right. Okay. So now that we have discussed a little bit of theory, right, I want you to work on a group on particular organization, right? So you have to think about an organization, first of all, and think about that you are going to develop a software system for that organization. So I told you earlier about our university. So organization, as an example, I can say organization as a university, right? So likewise, I will put you in groups. As a group, you have identified a particular organization, right? So university is an example. Then identify university's objective. So, sorry, organization objective. What do you mean by objective? Now, for example, as a university, we want to provide you a quality education. When I say quality education, we want to, have um, uh, the lecturers with higher educational qualification. So that's one objective. Second one, we want to provide you the latest technologies or latest degree program. So we are offering, data science, cybersecurity, which is more current compared to some other programs. So likewise, identify 3 objectives for an organization. So identify the organization, identify the key objectives. Second one, identify 3 users. Now, for example, since I talk about the university, I can identify Vice Chancellor is as a one user, Dean as another user, lecturer as another user, student as another user. Likewise, identify, right, 3 users. Why? It is very important to understand different users in your organization. Next, identify 2 function trees the information should support for each user. So what I want you to do is, for example, Vice Chancellor needs to know like how many students are enrolled in, let's say, one particular degree program. As a dean, I want to know like how many students have registered for a particular course. As a student, I want to know what my grade for a particular subject. So likewise, these are called functionalities. Identify 2 functionalities for each user. Next. Now remember, we talk about different types of software system. I told you to manage the entire organization, we have enterprise resource planning. Then transaction processing systems for day-to-day ones. Business support systems, knowledge management systems, user productivity system. So depending on, collected information up to this point, decide what kind of information system you want to have. Whether you want to have ERP, TPS, BSS, KMS, or UPS. Last one, select the development strategy. Remember, we talk about 3 strategies: structured analysis, object-oriented analysis, or agile. So you have to tell me like why you are choosing this one. Right. Okay. Take a screenshot of this, because now I'm going to put you in groups and then I'm going to visit your blockout rooms and then we'll discuss the answers for these, right? Okay. Now that we have done this, let me start breakout rooms. We have got 59. Remember that I'm assigning you to randomized groups, right? So I will have, let's say, 2 to 3, hopefully, in one group. Yes. And then I will ask you to move there, right? Okay, so let's start there. And if you need any information help, just let me know in the chat.